Hello you Spooncrafters and Bushcarvers out there. This is Max from Woodsman's Finest with another episode in my toolkit series. Today I want to talk about a whole range of tools actually, and also a kind of tool that is a little bit overlooked usually just because it's not as individual, maybe as archaic and fancy as our knives and axes and hooks and such. But today we're talking about Japanese pole saws. Probably one of my most beloved and crucial tools, so stay tuned. Well, this is in fact take number 2 on this whole video series, because last time, unfortunately, I had a problem with the microphone, and the slight wind that is coming in here all the time just completely wrecked all of my recordings. Isn't this a beautiful February in the Alps of Austria? Well, you see that times have changed a little bit. Last year around this time of the year I was standing in this much snow. But nonetheless, it allows me to harvest and keep carving outside, which I appreciate, of course. I just want to give you a little bit of an idea where we are here. Just over there in the distance you can see the snowy peaks of the Austrian Alps. When we are harvesting wood for greenwood, in this case I got to use a whole pile of greenwood that was cut on a hedge here, and I've got hazel, I've got some maple, I've got some cherry. It's beautiful, and I actually just delivered a rather nice cooking spoon to the family who lets me use the wood here. So when it comes to the harvesting part, saws are coming in extremely handy. I get the questions a lot about the tools that I'm using, and this is why I'm making all of these videos. So let me just point out, the saw is a tool in harvesting of wood and preparing it for spoon carving, and of course then also in the carving process itself that comes extremely handy. When you're harvesting wood with an axe or a hatchet, there is first of all a lot more risk involved. Second of all, very often, just like here, there isn't proper and safe space to swing an axe or a hatchet, and also you're losing a lot of material. A lot of people that I'm talking to are getting small quantities of wood. They're living in a town, they might get to know an arborist or a tree surgeon, which I always recommend to people to reach out to, and they would get really small quantities of wood. Now, in order to split, or like rather buck up in length sizing wood with a hatchet, you're losing quite a lot of wood in the big cleft that you need to actually cut in order to buck pieces. So there's all these advantages of the saw. The biggest one for me personally is of course the efficiency and the safety. Now today I'm gonna be talking about the Silky saws in particular, but before I get to the reason why, I would like to go over a couple of basics when it comes to Japanese pole saws. Already when I was quite young, I was of course fascinated with Japanese weaponry and martial arts, and I was fortunate to travel to Japan 18 times over the last 11 years, and I spent about 5 years training and crafting there. Already before that time though, it was very intriguing when I looked at websites of tools to find these interesting Japanese saws there. Back then, we're talking about 15 years ago, so a lot of people knew about them, but the percentage of people was rather in a niche of specialists when it came to cabinet making, joinery, etc. So like a type of fine woodwork, so to say. Now I came across these Ryoba saws, and they're so fine and thin that they actually, when you tap on them, they actually start singing. And they had a cutting edge, or like they had teeth on both sides. One of them was across the grain and one of them was for cutting with the grain. So I used these saws. I got a pair of them, I think, a pair, like one with of course two sides of teeth, and I used them only to cut my cedar arrows, match grade cedar arrows for my longbow tournaments, very precisely with them, because nothing that we had here in Austria came even close to the precision and cutting performance. Now a few years later, about 10 years ago, give or take, I came across these folding saws, first in Japan, and I don't think I have any video footage here that was not shot with my phone. So people who are following me on Instagram has seen the stories and the videos of me going through Japanese tool shops, so like just hardware stores basically, and we have hundreds, literally hundreds of different saws with different thicknesses, tooth size, tooth count, length of blades, folding, non-folding, just incredible. But this was the first time that I came across folding saws, Japanese folding saws, and they became my staple. The reason why was that they're extremely handy and small, compact, but at the same time they also allow you 21, 24, 36, 50 centimeters of blade length. And so I started using them for anything from harvesting my wood all the way to doing the stop cuts on the spoon, etc, etc. Japanese saws are all working on the pull. That is on the contrary to European or Western or American saws. Similarly to the kanna, the Japanese plane, that also works on the pull, it is a principle that you also find in a lot of Japanese martial arts. Pulling something in towards your body has a lot more power and control than pushing something away from you. That's why in spoon carving we're using the pull cut towards our chest, for example, so much. Kind of a draw knife movement. It's just something that gives you a lot of power in control. Now Japanese saws are all working entirely on the pull. That means on the push there's nothing really happening. There's a couple of specialties here, and I'm gonna put this into two parts. We're talking about the pruning, or like the harvesting, today. In the next episode we're talking about what kind of saws I'm using on the smaller scale, and when it comes to actually preparing billets and doing stop cuts. Recently I received a saw that has a Japanese original background. This is the Temagari by Silky. It's a great example for me to explain the specialties of the Japanese saw. The Temagari is first and foremost a felling and a pruning saw, and this is how Japanese saws mostly are used by us now in bushcraft, in camping, in canoe tripping, and in greenwood carving, and of course in Japan as well, first and foremost in gardening. Japanese gardens are world famous, and one very important part about the gardening there is that when you cut trees and you prune them so they grow a certain way, which is then building around the aesthetics of the Japanese garden. The cuts on the trees must be very fine so they are surviving these cuts easier. Now in Japan there's a lot of hardwoods, softwoods as well, especially cedar, but that is mostly what is replanted. In general in Japan there's a lot of hardwoods, different types of kaide, which is maple, then we have different types of sakura, which is of course all kinds of cherry. There is birch up north, and then there is of course a lot of other hardwoods like magnolia, honoki, and camphor, which I carved before, which the name escaped me somehow. So the Temagari is one of those saws that has an original background in Japan and was developed actually in Toyama, which is funny because that's actually the name of the school that I'm training in Japan. And I recently learned that from a Japanese fellow of mine. So on the Temagari we can see what is so crucial about the Japanese saw. There's really no cutting happening on the push, which is incredible because every single one of these teeth is shaving sharp, and they're sharpened actually on 3 planes. Apart from the ice hardened blades and the right flexibility for the job, there's another thing about Japanese saws that is very interesting. When you're looking at the teeth from the front, and you can actually see it on this saw because it's so massive, the teeth are forming a little triangle on the bottom, and they're actually tapering towards the plane that is touching the wood. So they're tapering to the outside on the bottom. That does 2 things. Like on a hollow ground knife, we are getting less drag and less friction on the blade as it goes through the wood, because the cleft actually is, the cut is bigger than the thickness of the saw, which is incredible by itself. Another effect that we're getting by that is that the saw is removing the very sticky sawdust of green wood that is made during the cut, so it's not clogging up. After recently stopping by in Japan at a master biwa maker, which is actually a type of Japanese lute, where I saw one of these temagaris, the original ones with very much the same look apart from having a wooden handle, I was just highly intrigued. And now that I've been able to use this for my work, I couldn't imagine not having this saw anymore, especially for anything that is thicker than, let's say, 20-25 centimeters, where I'm just saving up so much energy. Another thing that I love about this is the handle that is just the right size for two hands, and of course the modular grip that is coming off without any tools, and the sheath, because the sheath doesn't only have super high value Velcro, but it also comes with this cutting proof Kevlar type insert that allows me to just slide the saw in here without any damage, with a D-loop and actually even with a belt loop. Because this saw, despite its overall about 65 centimeter length, is something I would love to bring on any of my canoe trips, canoe hunts, or any of my hiking trips, just because the profile is so extremely slim, while the cutting performance is so great. Now these tools are primarily for greenwood pruning, but they're also working for some coniferous dry wood when you cut up firewood, which is primarily, of course, what I'm doing while I'm on camping or canoe hunting trips up in the far north of Ontario. So just a great saw overall, but don't take my word for it. Let's just find out how it's actually performing live. Now to the Temagari. Last time, as you can see, we worked already back here. So this time I will cut several pieces. I don't need this part here, but I will start out over here with this section that I cut over here already last time. Now let me just say a couple of words to using a Japanese pull saw. A lot of people get trouble with them for two reasons. First of all, they do not think about where the pressure of the tree is at this moment. Right now we cut over here already, so this part of the tree is actually hanging free. That means it hangs down. If I'm cutting it from the top, it actually wants to break. If it's sitting somewhere on another, I don't know, on a branch, on another tree after it fell, and it sits somewhere on the tip, actually it's hanging through in the middle, so the pressure goes down. Now if I cut it from the top, the two sides of the tree will actually pinch. So if it's hanging like this and it's actually resting somewhere, the pressure goes down in the middle, and I cut it from the top, it pinches the blade. In this case I would actually start from the bottom and cut upwards, so it's opening up like this. In this case here, it's hanging through. Second thing people get problem with, especially after they used European saws for a long time, is that they actually put pressure on the push, and then they push completely straight but a little bit at an angle. What happens is that the blade is actually getting stuck and it's bending, and I had a lot of people, unfortunately before, borrow a blade from me and it came back actually either in half or with the tip missing. If you're using a Japanese saw properly, there is no effort in cutting, it's extremely efficient, and you will use your saws for a very long time. So let's start over here, cut above the branch, it's hanging through, there shouldn't be any pinch. This time I'm putting my left foot back actually, so I can actually really use my left arm to pull through, and on the way forward we just want to let the saw glide. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. So I've got a nice cleft there. And let's go for it. Just on the pull, a little bit of pressure downwards, not much. I'm just pulling it backwards. Extremely efficient. Here we have a little bit of a problem with a pinch because this was still resting a little bit on this other branch. So what I'm usually doing now is I just lift it up a little bit to get the blade free. So there's still a little bit of an issue there. There you go. Alright. Clean cut, very efficient, not an issue. There you go. Beautiful. It's at least a couple cooking spoons in this guy. Alright. Now that we've got that, here's actually a piece of tree that is basically resting at the tip. So in this case, I wouldn't really cut it from the top. I would rather try cutting it from the bottom. Just have a look if there's everything free underneath. Cut it the other way around. This time I cut with the right hand. Let's see if I was right. You hear already the cracking. That means the chances are I was right. There you go. Nice. Okay, so now that this piece is actually free hanging, as you can see, we can cut it here. But before that, I don't really need all of this naughty stuff here. There is actually maybe a crook in here, but I just cut it right above this part here. There might be a couple of crooks in here. Let's see, I'm just gonna cut it. That's not a crook. Okay. Let's give it. This time I put my right foot back and I do the whole pulling with my right hand. The left hand is just there to support and guide, just with the Japanese sword. The lower hand is always the working hand. The upper hand is not doing much, just guiding. So after about, I don't know, a couple inches in, I usually tilt up the saw a little bit. That way I cut a smaller diameter. And now I tilt it back. So I'm again cutting a smaller diameter. Very efficient. This is something I would have been working on forever with my smaller saws. I use the whole body. There you go. And here we have got a nice piece to finish off. You can see the Temagari has actually tapering teeth. They're way bigger at the tips and smaller towards the handle. This is hard stuff, hard green wood. And them talking about the Temagari actually being the performance of a small chainsaw, I don't think that was actually very much over exaggerated. I could cut it probably faster, but I'd rather cut it controlled and take care of the saw. Hey, glad that you're still watching. Just for full disclosure, you will not find anything on my channel that is not used by me. If I don't like it, if I don't use it, if I don't trust it, if I'm not 100% behind the performance and the quality of a tool, the sustainability, the fairness, whatever, you won't find it here. As simple as that. Now I know people are getting a little bit tired of bro staffers, influencers, and whatever, self-promoting. But the fact is that over the last 5 or 6 years, I'm receiving not only hundreds of emails and messages every year asking what I'm using and why, questions about me showing people what I'm using so they can get a better idea of what it is. But I've also invested hundreds of even thousands of hours in sharing my thoughts about things to the best of my ability. Now, am I the person out there with the most amount of knowledge about saws, axes, steels, etc.? No. But over the last 10 years of traveling and using stuff every single day, I've, in my humble opinion, acquired the amount of knowledge that I can at least stand here and tell you guys what I'm using and why. And then it's free to anybody to make up their mind after. I don't just like hold something in the camera and go like, buy this is awesome. But I can back up my opinion, why I think things are great. And at the end of the day, what it gets people is just seeing something in hands of someone else. Let them make some arguments about why they think something is good, and then you're free to do with that information whatever you want. What you're getting is just me showing you what this actually does. Thanks for the attention. Alright, since I was too silly to press the record button last time, I squeezed another big part of this tree into that little fork there, which gives me relatively good guidance to cut this big knob here off the rest. Should be rather secure. Now, record it. Lid is perfect. Nothing is broken out. No teeth have any damage. I usually aim down the blade, see if there's anything left or right sticking out. Every single tooth shaving sharp, and I'm out of breath. Whew. Alright folks, that's that. I got a little bit warm, not gonna lie, but isn't it incredible how this saw works through the wood? Now the reason why I'm endorsing Silky is pretty simple. I've used a lot of different saws in Japan and outside of Japan. Silky is a saw, when you're going to a Japanese home hardware or like hardware store in general, you're gonna find a lot of Silkies. This is not a tool that is somehow a gimmick, and outside of Japan everybody talks about it. No, Silky is also the #1 brand in my opinion in Japan. Another reason why I'm endorsing Silky, it is readily available. Which means if I'm bringing my big boy XL teeth and I want to have a medium tooth blade with it as a combo, which I usually bring on my trips, I just go buy it, you know. Another reason why I am endorsing Silky is that throughout the outdoor community, may it be bushcraft, may it be canoe tripping, hiking, whatever it is, I have not heard any complaints. Now Silky is one of those outdoor companies, I feel like equipment companies who haven't jumped the shark, which is a way of a friend of mine to say that a company has started to put profit margin above quality. And despite Silky being, I can probably say, the leading Japanese saw manufacturer, I have not seen any of this profit getting in the way of quality control. All of these Silky saws are made in Japan, the quality is impeccable, and the value is great. A saw like this, or like the Katana Boy, the Big Boy, the Gon Boy, Pocket Boy, any of them with the replacement blades, is a saw that you're buying once in your life, and then maybe you're buying a replacement blade every couple of years. That is high value for me, especially when it comes to my job, and I'm able to get so much more out of my time and saving a lot of energy. When Japan outlawed the samurai cast in, I think, 1867 or 68 with the Meiji Restoration, a lot of the places in Japan that were at the forefront of producing katana or any type of weaponry for the samurai cast switched over to tool making. And so it is no surprise that Japan has to this day the most thriving and legendary tool makers probably in the world. Their saws are no exception. So thank you very much for watching, folks. I hope this was interesting. You've probably realized that my videos are not trying to be that short anymore. When I make a video and I'm putting the work in, it doesn't really matter much if I'm making a 10-minute or a 25-minute video. At the end of the day, I'm investing anything between 10 and 15 hours into a video like that, even if it doesn't look like this. I'm trying not to make them any short anymore, because I think if I'm bringing something to you and I'm showing you something, then I just want to be able to really get in depth, show you a lot of different facets, talking about different experiences I have, and I hope you appreciate that. Now, the reality of YouTube is pretty simple. If you're not liking videos, if you're not commenting, if you're not subscribing, YouTube channels are not spread, they're not recommended to other viewers. And even if I forget about liking a video, very often I find myself clicking a couple videos back because I forgot liking it. If I watched it, if I had any kind of benefit from it, then I just click the like button. It takes me a split second, and it is the little thing that the viewer can do to give back to the people who produce free content that is not free at the end of the day. It's just something people really not talking about, but there's a lot of cost and time involved with YouTube videos. So I just want to raise a little bit of awareness for anybody watching YouTube videos that free content is really not free. So if you're getting anything out of it, if you're learning something, just try to give a little bit back, and then this community can keep thriving. It's very important. So thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much for the support for the channel, and I hope to see you next time, guys. Cheers.